I'm in County Durham.
Oh, not too. I'll shout at you from the window.
Hello, mate.
Hi guys, welcome back to Interval Conversations. I'm so glad to be joined today by the wonderful Andy Ford. Now, Andy is a comedian and he's a legend in the world of pantomime, and I'm so glad to have him here. So, Andy, welcome to the podcast.
Nathan, how are you, lover? What a pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, brilliant. Andy, could you tell us how you actually first got into this industry?
Into this industry. Right. Well, I think I was born into it. I'm not saying that my parents were in the business, but from the earliest of ages, I can remember just wanting to perform. I mean, when I was at infant school in Exeter in Devon, if it was, if the kids were in the playground and it started raining, the dinner ladies would put us into the school hall and they'd plunk me on the stage to entertain the rest of the kids. I don't know how that happened. I know I loved it. I've no idea what I did. But from the age of about 4 or 5, that was like, that's what I'm going to do. And then I'd do shows in the garden and things like that. And on a Sunday after tea, me and my cousins would do a little show for me parents and me auntie and uncle in the front room. So it's always happened. And the first gig happened when I was 12 years old. My parents had bought me a banjo a couple of years before, and I'd had some lessons. And I started gigging. My dad taught me the old songs. I started gigging at the age of 12. So this year is my 52nd year as a paid performer. How about that?
Oh, that's incredible. So, could you tell us what it's like working on the comedy set? Obviously, working since 12. What is it like working the comedy circuit?
The comedy circuits I work are not sort of, it's really strange to say this, but years ago, they would have called it an alternative comedy circuit. Now it's the comedy circuit, but that's not really where I do my gigs. I started off doing, I was a cabaret act. And that was sort of, I started doing comedy in about mid-80s, I suppose. So, because I was a singer, first of all. And then I had my own band. And then if people broke a string, you'd have to do a gag to fill in. And then that sort of took over. And then I became a solo cabaret act. And from solo cabaret acts, I did cruises and theatre tours and eventually got into pantomime. And as soon as I did my first pantomime, I thought, this is it. I found my home. Because my comedy's always been, and one of the rare things nowadays, my comedy is fairly clean. It's a bit of innuendo, but I don't swear or anything. So when I landed in panto, it was everything I wanted. Plus I could be physical and funny, lots of freneticism in what I do. And all that fitted perfectly with pantomime. So I sort of found where I was meant to be, Nathan.
Yeah. Because speaking of panto as well, I was looking up on like Panto Archive, and they have a list of all the pantos. I had to scroll down. I was like, he's done a lot. Do you have any personal highlight? Do you have any personal highlights from those any panto over the year?
Well, I'd say everyone is appreciated and loved. I suppose my favourite was Dick Whittington in Bristol, because I was with Barbara Windsor. And she'd actually asked for me to be on the show. I was part of her contract. We were meant to work a few years before that together. She'd seen me on the Des O'Connor show on ITV, and I was working in panto for Jim Davison at the time. And she rang him and said, I want in my panto. And Jim asked me if I wanted to do it. I said, of course I would. And then Barbara wasn't very well, so it didn't happen. A few years down the line, when she came out of EastEnders and wanted to do panto again, she remembered and asked for me. So it was absolutely perfect. And we used to sit on the sofa in my dressing room. Our dressing rooms were right next to each other. and she'd tell me all about the Carry On films and stuff. And she was the loveliest lady, and she loved what I did, and I'll never forget that ever.
As well as Barbara, there were a few other big names. Like you've had David Hasselhoff, Warwick Davis. What was it like working with them?
All lovely in their own way. That's the great thing about Panto, is everyone's different. And when you're doing comedy with people, you do the comedy to lift the person with you up. If they haven't got the same comedy skills as you, I was chatting with Matt Slack about this the other day. If they haven't got the same comedy skills as you, they'll have something that you haven't got. So you do your funny bits and you give them their moment to shine. With David Hasselhoff, who's a lovely guy, by the way, I wrote a thing. I'm not sure which airport it was, somewhere around the world. I'd been cruising or something. Anyway, I was in this airport and this idea came to me because I thought, what are we going to do together? Because I'm Smee and David Hasselhoff is Hook. And I thought, well, he's not a comedian, but he's big and flamboyant and got the big voice. So I wrote The Wind Beneath My Wings. I didn't write the song, obviously, but I wrote a skit on it. I don't know if you've seen it, but basically he sings the song and I just chip in behind. It must have been cold there in my shadow, in his big voice. And I said, yes, Captain, it's flipping freezing. So never have sunlight on your face. That's all right. I saved a fortune in Nivea. So the comedy worked because it was me being daft against his strength. But he had a comedy twinkle in his eye. So it was a joy to do. And he was the same as people like, Warwick, especially. I wrote the pantomime with Warwick in Woking, and he's just the loveliest of men. And lovely Steve McFadden, who said to me when we got together for the launch, whatever you want me to do, I'll do, because I trust you. So, I mean, that goes a long way. And I worked alongside the Fonz from Happy Days, and he was just great, and ended up doing all my comedy skits with me. So I'm a lucky boy, Nathan, really.
Oh, definitely. Do you have a favourite joke or routine that you've done over the years?
Well, if people have seen clips of some of my pantos, I think it's popped up a couple of times, but I wrote a routine alongside this man, Brian Burden, who was is, but he's not performing anymore, but he was a great dame. His dad was in show business, Albert Burden. His dad gave Ken Dodd his first gig. How about that?
Oh, wow.
So we had... we were doing these pantos together and we wanted a new routine. So I came up with an idea of, he would say something to me and it would be the name of a pop star and I'd launch into a song and it became my pop idol routine. So, and basically the setup was, I want to be a pop star and whoever I'm working with says you'll never make it as a pop star. I think in the one that I did with the lovely Liz Robertson, she'd say, you can't be a pop star, boys can't sing properly. I've always said, boys are quiet and girls are loud. You've always said, what? Girls are loud. And then I do a girls are loud thing. And it was Brian that said to me, just play a bit of the record and mime it and dance to it. So that's what I did. And now I think I've done that in about 20 pantomimes. And it's normally the bit that the press write about. I've had, when I did it with Barbara Windsor, I always give the star the tag, the payoff. And Barbara Windsor's payoff was Lady Gaga. So I had Barbara Windsor doing an impression of Lady Gaga, Henry Winkler, David Hasselhoff, and Paul Michael Glaser, who was Starsky, had them all doing Beyonce, little mimicking Beyonce. So it was great, and everyone's done it for me. Steve McFadden and I have been doing Taylor Swift. Oh, so wow. it was just, and to see them doing stuff that's completely out of their comfort zone, but they trust me. It's so rewarding, Nathan. It really is.
So you've already sort of touched upon it. I was going to ask, how involved are you with the writing process? But you sort of covered that.
Well, yeah, but you don't, I mean, not every year do you write everything you want. Sometimes it's already set and there isn't time to write stuff, but I always try and put something in. And I was with Les Dennis this year in Plymouth. We were one of the few pantomimes in Britain that actually happened. And we were with the wonderful Conor McIntyre, who was a baddie in Coronation Street. And anyway, he's an actor, a lovely man, turned up, learned his script. Les and I turned up, looked at each other. Have you learned it? Now. Have you learned it? Now. Because we know it changes in rehearsal. And if we learn it at the beginning, we haven't got time to color it the way that comedians like to color. So you're going to have a rough idea, but I've never known a comic turn up to rehearsal and be, as they say in the business, off the book. In other words, they don't have to look at the script, because comedy develops in rehearsal.
It's good that you brought that up, because that's actually the next question. You were involved in one of the only pantos to go on over Christmas. What was it like being the subject of jealousy of every performer in the country and getting back on stage?
Well, it was interesting because I was talking with Billy about it the other day on my Happy Chat program, and he said that he was, you know, he wanted to do it, but he'd heard things like we would all have to sit backstage and be 6 foot from each other and have a mask on waiting to go on stage. It sounds like torture. And it is what we did. We were sitting backstage 6 foot from each other, waiting for a time to go on. When it was our cue, off came the mask and on we went. And on stage, we were 6 meters apart. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. It was so different. The audience was socially distant with masks on, but humans do this thing. They overcome. They find a way to have a good time. The panto was really, really funny. Yet, I'm sure when it started, people were seeing the distance between the performers. But by the end, it was so funny and the story went so well, you sort of lost that and you just had a show. You had a panto. We lost 3 days at the end, Nathan, because we went into tier 3. We're down in Plymouth. But we were literally the only major pantomime still standing in Britain. And Les and I are very proud of that in Connor. And Simon Webb from Blue was in it, absolutely fantastic. Lovely Charlotte Haynes, Jenny Dale, Emily Harrington, some great performers. And we had the Timbuktu Flyers, who were acrobats. So the panto had everything, just not many sets, because we couldn't have a whole crew backstage. Because we had to be very careful with the, you know, we were tested 3 times during that panto and not one of us ever tested positive. So we were living by ourselves. I literally went from digs to taxi to theatre. That was my life for 4 weeks. But I did it. I performed on stage. It was a joy. It was quite trepidatious, if there's such a word, at the beginning, but when we said at the end, we're all going to remember it forever, and we missed it when it finished.
Because I was supposed to be on stage a few weeks ago as Mr. Smee in Peter Pan, but that had to get cancelled.
Were you, mate? Oh, you're
like,
a turn, are you?
Oh yes. But yeah.
Oh wow! Where was that going to be, Nathan?
Halifax.
Halifax. Oh, you're just down the road from me then.
Yeah.
Because I'm in County Durham.
Oh, not too. I'll shout at you from the window.
Hello, mate. I love it up here. And the snow's actually gone, mate. It's actually melted. Come on.
No, it's just rain now in Halifax. Don't know why they call it sunny Halifax. It never is.
Who calls it sunny Halifax?
You. People not from Halifax.
Sunny Devon, mate. I'm from sunny Devon, but I'm now living in sunny County Durham, and I love it.
Halifax, it's a lovely place to come from. Not too nice to go to, but it's nice to come from.
We'll be here all week.
Thank you. But yes, so you've mentioned as well a couple of times you have your own podcast going at the moment called Happy Chat Sundays. Could you tell us about that, please?
Well, when it all went into lockdown last year, I thought, I've got to keep working. I ain't going to earn any money, but I have to keep working. Comedians have to keep working. So I did live on a Sunday night on Facebook, a stand-up comedy routine for 10 weeks. I didn't repeat a gag in 10 weeks. And I was very proud of myself. And although there was no laughter coming in the end, I was assuming they were laughing at certain points and giving myself time. Boom, next gag. And then after that, I started doing a variety show because I thought, it's not just me that's frustrated that you can't perform, Andrew. So I contacted all my friends and they recorded videos at their house of them juggling and doing magic and singing. And so I did an Andy Ford and Friends variety show that ran for 8 weeks. So that's 18 weeks worth of shows. And then now we've gone back into lockdown. I'm doing a happy chat. And what I've decided to do is, because people are fed up with hearing all the bad news, I talk to entertainers and we look for, as if we're from Halifax, the sunny side of life. So we try and keep it upbeat, and some are about half an hour. Occasionally we go nearly the hour. But I've had the wonderful Billy Pierce, Les Dennis, Steve Hewlett, Matt Slack, and we've got coming up this week from CBBS, the wonderful Andy Day, Andy's Adventures, real hero and a good friend of mine. Eric Potts is coming up, the pantomime dame who I've worked with many times. Sarah Jane Buckley is coming up, who was in Hollyoaks and Blood Brothers and Calendar Girls. So a lot of stars giving up their time. Pauline Daniels, comedian, a lot of stars giving up their time, you know, just to chat and make you smile. Paul Burning's doing it soon from Britain's Got Talent. So many, and thanks to all of them for you know, having a bit of fun on a Sunday night.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait for this week's episodes. But I just have.
I haven't recorded it yet.
I just have one last question for you, Andy. That's all right.
Mate.
Oh, do you have any advice for anyone wanting to get into this industry once it's safe?
Well, if you're wanting to get into this industry, you're there, aren't you? Because it's all about wanting to do something. All I'd say is don't give up on your dream, but in order for the dream to happen, you've got to make it happen, really. You've got to work hard on it. And you get knockbacks. We've all had knockbacks, but you keep going. And then, you know, when you're walk off to the sound of your own feet occasionally, as I have done, you know, on the odd cruise ship and really struggled. But then the opposite side of that coin is that I did the Royal Variety Show and met the Queen and worked with Barbara Windsor and David Hasselhoff. Everything's out there. It's down to you. If it's what you really want to do, you make it happen. You're the only one that can.
That is some absolutely brilliant advice. Andy, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah. And thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Interval Conversations.